Thank you, Kim. So I'm thrilled to be here today with Cathy Curtis, a certified financial planner and registered investment advisor, and Lauren Boyman, who is the executive director of social media at Morgan Stanley Smith Barney. And as Kim mentioned, I currently head the category development for the financial services vertical at LinkedIn, the world's largest professional network. And during my tenure at LinkedIn, I've seen a groundswell of activity among financial marketers who are really seeking to adapt their marketing strategies to the shift that's going on with consumer behavior. We're also seeing explosive growth within the financial advisor community on how they're engaging and leveraging LinkedIn in their day-to-day business practices. And a lot of this growth and participation is really being driven by firms opening up access to social platforms, allowing their advisors to leverage LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook in their everyday business practices. Advisors that are participating are realizing efficiencies in how they manage their relationships. And one of the key things that we're seeing right now is that rules of engagement are being formed with the help of middleware providers like Socialware, Hearsay, and Actiance. We're really addressing the guidelines that have been put forth by FINRA in their 1006 document. What excites me about this webcast is that we have two trailblazers alongside me. Cathy started to tap into social media back in 2008, and Lauren was key in driving Morgan Stanley in their recent announcement, which advised us that they would begin allowing advisors to engage and encouraging their participation on LinkedIn and Twitter. So some of the key topics that we're going to be discussing during this webcast are: how is social media changing the way advisors do in their daily business practices? You know, how does it complement their current marketing strategies? What value is it providing to the end consumer? What are some of the best practices? How do you stay on the right side of compliance? And what are key components that are critical in rolling out your social media strategy? I'd like to first start with Cathy. And Cathy, if you could share with me some of your motivations and your current goals, your initial motivation and current goals in tapping into social media, and really how you've become the expert that you are in the communities you participate in.
Sure, Jennifer, thank you for that nice introduction. I got serious about social media when I decided to rebrand my company, Curtis Financial Planning. I've been in business about 10 years. And I decided to pick a niche, and it is women. And social media has been integral in my rebranding strategy and my success in reaching my target clientele. I primarily use LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter, and I also blog from my own blog of independent means. I guest blog regularly, and I'm also a frequent public speaker on personal finance topics. But without social media, I'm a small advisor. Social media is a single way a small advisor can broadcast themselves into a much wider audience and actually appear much bigger than they really are. And so I would say my business has grown in the last 3 years since I've been using social media tremendously.
So Lauren, you represent the largest brokerage house in the U.S., and the industry was shocked and exhilarated by Morgan Stanley's Smith Barney's announcement that they were going to allow 600 advisors to start piloting and really leveraging social media. What drove this change? What drove Morgan Stanley Smith Barney to relook at how they were going to engage in social media, both at a brand and a financial advisor level?
So we began to look at social media because of a recognition that our clients are changing the way that they communicate and interact with each other, and as a result, changing the way that they want to interact with their financial advisors. Our clients are online making purchases during the day, they are texting with their spouses, they are Skyping with their grandchildren at night, and they don't recognize that FINRA has rules and regulations. They don't care necessarily that FINRA's rules make it difficult for advisors to be on these sites. They want to communicate with them in the ways that are appropriate for them. So, I think I would argue that part of their day also includes social networking. And it was interesting, there's a recent VIP Forum survey that said that 63% of high net worth individuals use social media for personal finance and investing, and said that usage actually influenced some investment or purchasing behavior. I think that's an incredible statistic. So with this change in behavior, we realized that our clients' expectations are changing, right? It goes back to the fact that, they may compare us to Amazon.com. They're not, necessarily comparing us to the other financial services firms. So we realized that we needed to change the way that we were allowing financial advisors to be on social media sites, and allow them to participate in the conversations that are already happening between their, the clients and prospects.
That's really exciting. So what were the initial reactions? When you made this announcement, how did advisors within your firm, were they excited? Was there trepidation? Was there full endorsement? How did, your large advisor sales force react to it?
There was an extraordinarily positive reaction to the announcement. There was a story that I like to tell that I think just sort of exemplifies how important this announcement was for our advisors. So I had a conversation with a financial advisor who's probably in her early 60s. She had a client who is in her 70s, a divorcee with a very large account. And for a long time, she had been sending her financial advisor links to pictures of her travels, her trips on Facebook. And the FA kept saying, I can't take a look at them. I'm not allowed to be on. Here are all the rules and regulations. Finally, the client just really got fed up and decided to take her account elsewhere. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's not necessarily who you expect to be on social media sites. I mean, this is a woman who's in her 70s, right. But people take these things very seriously and very personally, and so I think that just sort of exemplifies how important this is to advisors. And there may be advisors that, similar to any new tool or technology, may be apprehensive about going on social media sites. And what I tell them is that social media is already what you're doing, and what you're doing very well, right? It's all about building and maintaining and managing those relationships. It's just done online, and I would argue it's actually a much more efficient way to do that, right? So when you compare it to some of the more traditional means of an FA, and how they market themselves, whether it's events or seminars or even websites, the reach and engagement potential because of the viral nature of social media is so incredible. So I tell FAs that this is a real opportunity for you to market yourself more efficiently. And not only that, but then take that a step further to communicate with the clients, the children of your clients, right? So FAs are always looking for ways to bridge that gap between the wealth transfer from parents to children. And I think this is a great way to, over time, have FAs get to know what that FA is like, get to know what they're thinking, and realize that they're up with the times, that they're on social media sites.
Especially with the emergence of Gen X and Gen Y, right, and the revenue streams they're going to be coming from the segment. Yeah. So Cathy, from your perspective, I mean, you've been, a key participant in social media since 2008. From an independent advisor, so from a fee-only, fee-based, and even broker-dealers, what reactions have you seen in terms of the acceptance, really believing that this is, as Lauren mentioned, a key part, a complement to their strategy, allowing them to be more efficient? Are you seeing those adoption curves by these various segments?
Well, yes, and first off, one of the reasons that I got into social media was it was a way that I could compete with the bigger firms. I mean, the bigger firms have so many marketing, advertising dollars to spend on so many different platforms. And social media is very inexpensive as far as dollars go. As far as time, it can be time-consuming if you don't know how to manage it right. So I was thrilled to find a platform that I could use that Charles Schwab and Fidelity and Vanguard and Morgan Stanley were not using. It was my way to get in there and make myself known in the world. So when I heard the news, I thought, oh, this is really interesting. It's kind of a game changer, really. Right. But it depends on how the advisors use it. I mean, there is a certain learning curve to use social media well. It'll take some time. So I think maybe I have a year or so where I could still be the trailblazer and take advantage of social media. As far as the broader independent advisor community, I have found that independent advisors have been extremely hesitant about using social media tools. One thing, there's a fear about compliance. And I also am aware of compliance, but I decided, let me do it and see if I get my hand slapped, because I thought it was such a tremendous opportunity. Like Lauren said, there's so many people on social media. I mean, it's where people are getting their information and their personal finance information now, so you almost have to be there.
Right.
I'm surprised how long it has taken the financial service community at large to use social media in a big way. It's actually very surprising.
So you're seeing it, is it becoming table stakes then, in terms of as part of an advisor's, channel mix and marketing strategy?
Well, let's put it this way, there's a lot more seminars and educational workshops on how to use it properly than there ever has been. And you're gonna see more of the independent advisor community using social media as well, definitely.
So when you look at LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook, there's different use cases, right? So how do you rank these various platforms in terms of use and value that it provides to your advisory practice?
Well, first off, I'm not biased, and I am here with LinkedIn, but LinkedIn is by far probably the first tool that I would use if I was starting out in social media, just because it is actually the biggest database in the world. And that's really the way you should think about it. It's a database of potential clients and prospects that you can tap into. And so I would rank LinkedIn as the #1 if you weren't going to do anything else. And also, LinkedIn doesn't require quite as much attention. You can put a lot of attention in, you'll get a lot back. But as long as you have a really clean, thorough profile that really says who you are and what you do, a good headshot, and then connect, and then work the connections, which is not hard to do. There's many tools to do it. LinkedIn. Then I would say secondly is Facebook. Not Facebook personal, you've got to separate the two. Facebook business, set up a business page. Facebook is always going to be more social. That's okay. I chose to name my business page Women and Money instead of Curtis Financial Planning, because I thought that was more social. That fits with my strategy to not be too salesy or too promotional. And lastly, Twitter. Twitter for me is the most exciting and the most fun. And I have had more opportunity using Twitter within my industry than any other platform. I have to say though, the LinkedIn is where I have had direct contact with potential clients to hire me as an advisor.
And do you think that, is that because of a certain trust that's engendered, given that, it's, your professional identity is tied to it, and the spirit of the conversations and the type of dialogue, is that why you see clients reaching out to you via our platform versus,
I think
other
so.
platforms?
I think it's the type of people that are using LinkedIn. It's considered to be the most business platform of all, and yes, definitely a trust factor. And the others are just that much more social, where you may be teaching people about personal finance, building community, but maybe you are not going to get a tweet saying, "I want to hire you as my financial advisor." That would be amazing, but it doesn't happen very often.
But people do reach out to you via LinkedIn through your email, right, or inbox.
Yes.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
And you're seeing that as a new form of contact, right?
Definitely, yeah.
So Lauren, with your announcement, obviously LinkedIn is a key tentacle, and can you share with us, why you chose LinkedIn, the role it plays, the value, and then also obviously Twitter being another core. What is the use case for both platforms?
Sure. So, as you know, we did announce that we're going to allow FAs to use both LinkedIn and Twitter. And I think for us, LinkedIn was kind of a no-brainer. We had FAs clamoring to use LinkedIn and to be on there professionally for a long time. And so actually part of the overall effort is really a kind of compliance risk mitigation effort as well, right? Because we know that they are out on on there on social networks and want to be more active. So we had so much interest that back in the summer of 2010, we actually ran a kind of static only LinkedIn pilot. And what we found with that was that there was a lot of frustration on the part of FAs. I mean, they wanted to use all of the powerful, features and functionality that the site has in terms of sending invitations, asking for not recommendations rather, but introductions, participating in group discussions and, question and answers. So what we realized was that static pilot was not the answer. The answer was getting to, open functionality, getting to a compliance technology solution. So, we sort of turbocharged that effort. I think when I look at the three, top social networking sites, I think that they're all very complementary. Right? So I don't think I would, say that one is better than another. I think they just have different use cases. I think for an FA, they should be on LinkedIn, like you said. I think that's just table stakes at this point to have a professional profile. I think Twitter is a great way to share thought leadership. And Facebook is obviously more personal in nature. And, we chose to roll out LinkedIn and Twitter first because actually from a compliance standpoint, they were, relatively speaking, easier. I think this overlap between personal and professional on Facebook tends to worry FAs. I think FAs need education about it. I actually think FINRA needs education about it. I think there's so many different use cases of Facebook, and we didn't want to slow down our efforts. We wanted to get out, and allow FAs to start using these tools as soon as possible. So we launched with just LinkedIn and Twitter, but we're actively working on our Facebook strategy. And I think, there are a lot of different ways to use it, all the way from the brand to the branches to the financial advisor, in a professional way, in a personal way. So it's actually more complicated than it seems. And I said, LinkedIn and Twitter are relatively easier.
So, obviously, Cathy and Lauren, prospecting is a key opportunity, right? And key goal that a lot of advisors in terms of leveraging LinkedIn as a platform, but thought leadership as well. And really becoming an expert, and Cathy, you've been very successful at that. So your content is key, right? It's key to being successful in social media. So if you could share with me, how do you curate content? How do you find meaningful, unique, and relevant content? And how do you distribute that? I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Well, first of all, with social media, if you are not compelling and captivating in some way, people are not going to friend you, follow you, or connect with you. So content is key. And not only thought leadership content, but to have a sense of humor, be somewhat interesting to people, and show a little bit of your personal side too. If your content is all business and it's about finance, how many people are going to run and read that every time you post something? So I keep that in mind. And I would say rule of thumb is 80%, keep it 80% somewhat related to your business, thought leadership, and 20% personal. Throw in some things about yourself that, I love food. I talk about food and wine a lot, and I've built kind of a community around that. Now, these people also know that I'm a financial advisor. So there is an opportunity there. If they are looking for an advisor or their friends are looking for an advisor, they know Cathy, the person who loves food and wine, is also an advisor that I could hire. So it's very valuable in that way. As far as, now, to be successful on social media, you need to be there. So if you set up a LinkedIn profile, a Twitter profile, Facebook, and you never show up, that's not a good idea. You might as well not set up a profile at all. But once you do, you have to be consistent. I'd say LinkedIn, each one, you have to do something at least daily. You have to keep up on it, so you have to get a lot of content. So I'd use a couple of tools. One is I RSS feed in all the top personal finance writers across the country for the major newspapers and magazines. And I also use Google Alerts for specific topics. And there's so much great writing out there. I don't have to write everything. And so I find a great article, and if I think it's of interest to my followers or connections, I'll post it on the different platforms. That's a key way that I curate content. I also write for my own blog, so it's a great way to get my writing out there. And I also post, and I guest blog. Those all go on the social media platform.
Lauren, what are your thoughts in terms of your pilot rollout and your content strategy?
Sure. So I thought what you were saying was really interesting because we are providing our financial advisors with a library of pre-approved content that they can send out. And so essentially, you're having to do this is exactly what I tell our financial advisors, right? You're having to do all of that work of curating what's out there. And I think the benefit of working for a big firm is that we do that for our advisors. So we are curating not just external content, but more so I think what provides our financial advisors with a competitive advantage is that we're curating our own internal thought leadership. So our global investment committee, right, we're going to be our wealth management and retirement research and reports, we're going to be providing that in 140 character little social media bits. And our global investment committee, this is a breaking announcement here, but our global investment committee is in the near future going to have a Twitter account as well. So I think part of the announcement in reaction from the community was this balance of, it's great that you're doing this, but you're also hindering FAs by only providing them with pre-approved content to send out. I think it's a bit of a misperception, right? I think partially our FAs are going to be at an advantage because they're going to have this constant, unique content to send out, and it makes the program for them really turnkey, right? So that every day they don't have to think about, what am I going to send out on social media today? Is it going to be relevant? Right? It will be very easy for them. The other thing I am telling financial advisors is that on LinkedIn, they actually can get their status updates pre-approved, right? So it's not that it all has to be, or moderated rather, right? So it's not that it all has to be kind of, firm-driven content. And I think the way that FAs manage it from a sort of team practice standpoint will help a lot. So I think if they have one person managing the social media efforts for the whole team, I think that will help, and mostly prospects or clients will be following one financial advisor. So I think that the pre-approved content actually is more of an advantage than a disadvantage.
I'd like to comment on first off, I think the term pre-approved content alone is just scary. I think you should come up with a better term. And because pre-approved content does not sound unique to me or personal, and I hope that my edge is still going to be that I choose my own content, and it can be very personal,
Right.
and that I don't have to use pre-approved content. I really believe that social media is about being personal and truly connecting with individuals, and I don't know if the pre-approved content is going to be able to do that.
Well, it's pre-approved, so actually that's a great point. So it's pre-approved to start the conversation. So this gets at the compliance aspect and the differentiation between static and interactive content. So what FINRA requires is that you pre-approve anything that's static, right? So what our firm feels comfortable with, and every firm has to decide for themselves because there's not clear-cut guidance here from FINRA. So what our firm feels comfortable with is static content being the first post or a tweet, right? So subsequent to that, similar to, on Facebook or on LinkedIn, you've got that back and forth dialogue, right? That is all considered interactive content, and you can, we're going to capture it, retain it, and supervise it. So I don't think it's all bad.
Right.
Yeah, no, and I have to agree with you on one key point, is the efficiency of having the content provided, because for a lot of advisors, the fact of finding content is daunting. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons that people do not blog,
Right.
and they don't go on these platforms, is because of the time factor, which can be substantial. So that definitely is going to be great for your advisors, there's no doubt about it.
And to your point, Lauren, it's about getting started, right? But I know that in hearing you speak in the past, you really, Morgan Stanley is supporting a social dialogue, right? And if you could talk a little bit about, your thoughts around like creating a social dialogue from both a brand and an advisor point of view, that'd be very interesting.
Sure. So, this may be a bit unsocial to say, but I actually think that the notion of brands on social networks is fairly useless, right? I don't know why somebody would want to be friends with a brand other than, potentially for discounts. You can see that when you look at the numbers of the world's biggest financial services firms. They're out there on Facebook and Twitter, and we know that they have millions of clients, yet they have between hundreds and only thousands of followers, right? So there must be some disconnect between people wanting to, follow or hear from a big brand. I think that's where MSSB is at such an advantage, because this is all about, for us, enabling our financial advisors to do, like I said before, what they're already good at doing, networking, and just, now doing it online. So it's not necessarily about putting our brand out there. It's about supporting and enabling financial advisors to interact with exactly what you said, with that, on that personal level. And really, this is not about generating online interaction. I mean, it's part of it, but it's to then create that offline, right? It's supposed to lead to a phone call. It's supposed to lead to a lunch or an in-person meeting. I think that's what sort of the misperception is that everything is going to wind up happening on social networking sites. I think it's just a launching, a jumping off point.
So the way I really see it, I mean, you do have, you have a website, right? And you have a lot of thought leadership and content. And so obviously company pages are a way for you to take a lot of that content and showcase it based on very, tailored to specific communities. And I know we've been talking about, leveraging really as a broadcasting tool as well. Cathy, you've talked about creating your own company page. You had mentioned you have a business page on Facebook. And,
Right.
The value that you see in terms of being able to showcase certain content, right, based on certain user groups.
Yeah, and speaking to the brand issue, with independent advisors, this is a very, very big difference between big firms and smaller advisors, is that we really are our own brand. I mean, we're putting ourselves out there as the advisor. We're not part of a bigger umbrella company. So if you don't have a strong brand as a independent advisor, it's probably going to be a lot harder for you to market yourself. So, for example, throughout my all of my collateral, all of my online materials, all have a general theme. I market to savvy women and their families and businesses. I talk about the simple truths about money. My color themes are all the same, and so I've become kind of my own brand, and I believe that has led to a lot of success for me in building my practice. Whereas a financial advisor with a big firm, I don't know, are you going to allow them to have their own separate Twitter profile and things like that, or will it be a Morgan Stanley branded profile?
No, they can have their own unique content on, for their Twitter profile and on their LinkedIn profile. It
And
just
their
has to be
background, for example,
pre-approved.
will it be a branded?
Their background will be branded
As Morgan Stanley?
as Morgan Stanley.
Okay, so see,
And
that's
for
the
the
key.
purposes mostly actually of disclosures.
Yeah, but it's a real difference between building your profile online as an independent versus with a bigger firm, where
Right.
you're
Yeah.
part of a much bigger
No doubt,
structure.
there are differences, yeah.
Yeah,
You both raised you touched upon an interesting topic, and that is in terms of having a dialogue with consumers, and in terms of really providing unique content and just that interactivity. And so looking at groups, being a key area of our site where we see active participation, both at a advisor and at a investor level. What are your thoughts in terms of allowing your advisors to post, to be an active part of a group? How are you looking at that from a static versus interactive content perspective?
So it goes back to, the rules that I talked about before apply to groups and to questions and answers as well. So that first post is static, and then the subsequent discussion is interactive. So I think RFAs will find a lot of value from participating in groups and acting as their own kind of thought leader there, and also in the questions and answers section.
Great. And Cathy, are you active in groups? Do you leverage it?
I have to admit, I don't leverage it as much as I should. I think on LinkedIn, it's probably the most valuable tool an advisor can use if they want to let themselves be known in their knowledge and expertise. However, this is the area where I think advisors have to be the most careful when it comes to compliance, that you answer the questions appropriately and really don't go over the line into getting into specific investment advice, because that's what compliance is all about. They don't want you recommending stocks or recommending redoing your whole portfolio because what's happening with the treasury bonds, and so you don't want to get into specific advice. You have to be careful. But I believe it's a really great opportunity for advisors online to promote
Because you are
themselves.
seeing the dialogue, you see, consumers asking, where do I start, right? What are the right skills, or how do I find the right financial advisor? Given the financial crisis, what strategy should I, how do I get started again? I mean, you're seeing these type of conversations go on, so you want to
Right.
be part of that dialogue.
Yeah, but I believe you have to be very careful in the way you answer.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
So obviously they're key trigger terms, right, that you want to avoid. So I guess just because we have around 15 minutes left, and before I turn it over to, I guess, some questions that people that are watching this webcast have, can you just share in terms of best practices, Cathy? So in looking at, the past 3 years, any type of best practices that you feel are really important, both at an advisor, or general social media use perspective. And Lauren, I'd be interested, as you're rolling out your strategy, what are the best practices that you're sharing within, within your firm?
Okay. I'd be happy to. And you do learn a lot by being present on social media about what is okay and what isn't okay, sort of the etiquette of social media. And one of the main points is that you do not want to be too self-promotional, too salesy, and always talking about what you do for a living. You've got to make sure that you're adding value to people, and that's not really value to people. That's trying to get clients or prospecting. So I'd say the prospecting part needs to be much more subtle than, and then emphasize talking about what you do, topics that would be of interest to your followers as far as personal finance topics, to create the image of yourself or the reality of yourself as an expert. So I would say that is key to keep the promotional part a much smaller part of your social interaction. And also, I said earlier, be present. Make sure that you're participating. There are ways to do that. There are ways to systematize your social media use so that it's not a daunting thing where all day long you're wondering whether you should be tweeting or whether you should be putting something on LinkedIn. You could do first thing in the morning, log into all your accounts, maybe in the evening, and so that you stay with it without it overtaking which is your business, which is really helping clients. And the other thing that I notice using social media is that the more you're out there, first off, the more phone calls you're going to get, you're going to increase your business. You're going to get busier. You are also going to have people asking you to do guest blog posts, to public speak, and I'm here because of this, this is such a wonderful opportunity. But there are going to be opportunities that you may not want to say yes to, so you have to learn to say no, or you're not going to be practicing what how you're making your living as a financial advisor. So those are just a few.
Right, and I know that you leverage several tools, right? So in terms of how do you automate, right, and be more efficient in prioritizing your social media activities? I know you've shared with me in the past. I guess could you just share some of the tools that you leverage?
Sure. There are specific tools to each platform. One that comes to mind immediately is Hootsuite with Twitter, where you can actually calendar your tweets. So you could put them out as far as several months out if you want to. You could pick a day of the week to do that, so you don't always have. Twitter is probably the platform that can use up or waste the most of your time because it's very, very compelling. It's instant conversation. You want to be there once you're on it. You get to know people, you like them. So I think that would be the platform that you would want to make sure you automate what you're doing. And Facebook, also your business page, there are so many apps available on Facebook that you can automate your feeds into your page so you are not actually having to post your articles. They're feeded in on a periodic basis. And LinkedIn, you can automate email. If you're prospecting, you can email out your advanced searches when you're trying to find a certain kind of person. So really, if you would just, you have to take the time to learn how to use the platforms, and then the time spent on it could be lessened greatly, definitely.
So Lauren, going back to, I guess, best practices, or how are you equipping your advisors, right, in entering this?
So it's similar to what you were talking about. I'll talk about best practices from two perspectives. One is how you get FAs to adopt this and use it successfully, which is what you were just talking about. And then the other is from a corporate financial services marketer perspective. How do they actually get this initiative off the ground? So on the first front, I think the biggest challenge is getting FAs to adopt the new tool and to use it consistently. And I think, inertia is just the biggest challenge, right? And they actually have to change their behavior and do this on a daily basis, or at least committing to, learning how to use it and use tools that help, use it efficiently. So we're providing our financial advisors with lots of different training, firstly, compliance training, right? But then also, how to use LinkedIn, your 10-minute LinkedIn routine, how to use Twitter, and we're breaking it up into bite-sized, modules that FAs can, go back to and listen to in a pretty engaging format. And then the other thing I think that, we're doing that will be helpful is creating a social media calendar, if you will, so that an FA is new to these tools, they can actually follow day by day. What are the things that I need to do? What should I be doing, on a weekly basis? What should I be doing daily? So I think that will help people get up and running, and then also kind of stay on track and excited. And then on the other front, in terms of how to get this initiative off the ground, I think it's this. Success factors here are similar to any big initiative. Senior leadership is very important. Partnering with your cross-functional partners. So our legal, compliance, risk organizations have been incredibly helpful, and this is their initiative as well. So that's definitely a best practice. What else? I think that's it. Those two. Yep.
So let's just see if there are any questions that have come in from the community. And I'm not seeing here. I guess as we pull up these questions, measurement. They're obviously, improving out the value of social media. We have heard from a prospecting perspective, as you mentioned, Cathy, that there's a number of leads that are coming in that you're sourcing. But how do you measure, your use of social platforms? How, if you could share with us your measurement and really, from a short-term and a long-term success perspective.
Okay. This is an area that is difficult. Any advertising is really hard to measure perfectly.
Right.
But for me, I use certain tools. Well, okay, let me step back. One of the most important benefits of social media is that your profile is on the internet, and you are lifted up to the top of a Google search because of your online activity. So one way I measure it is how many phone calls I get from potential clients who tell me they found me using a Google search, which is, for a small independent advisor, is unusual to be found that way. I know that that exposure has increased because of my use of social media. There is no doubt about it. They're not finding me on search on my financial advisor platforms, like the FPA has an advisor search, so
Right.
does NAPA. They're finding me with just a broad-based Google search. So that's one of the ways that I measure. You can also measure things there's all kinds of tools. For your website, Google Analytics, you can attach that to your website, and you can find out how many people are visiting your website, how often, how long they stay on your website. So you could see if the various campaigns you do, public speaking, how impactful they are to your business, things like that. So those are some of the tools that I use.
And Lauren, how is your company looking at, measuring this rollout?
So I think it's a matter of just aggregating what the individual advisors are doing, similar to what you're talking about, because there are some statistics that we'll be able to see from a corporate standpoint, and we'll track whatever metrics that we can. But then there is a worksheet that we're planning to give financial advisors so that they can track on their own, and they know what are the metrics that we want to go back and ask them about. So we're going to be doing that at key points along the way.